Here's something that's pretty critical to the R experience, working with packages and libraries. This is not something that's terribly complicated, and if you've worked in Stata or SAS or MATLAB or Java or C, you've probably done something like this, some version of this. It may have not looked exactly like what I'm going to do, but this probably won't look too foreign to you. But it is important to go over. Um, it's important to go over one of the reasons being that most of the things that I do in R, I do through external packages. And so when we're in the workshop, a lot of the content that I've prepared is peppered pretty heavily with calls to loading external libraries. And so I wanted to go over that here so that doesn't look like a really foreign process to people. And all I'm going to do for starters is just load a package that has already been installed in the libraries folder of my R version. And this is a pretty simple process. So I'm over here in RStudio. I've just opened up a new script, and just down here in the console, this is a little bit of the cart before the horse, but I'm going to start by looking at, this is a new workspace, and I'm just going to use the packages method here to print out the packages that are currently installed and available in this workspace. And so we can see that there are a few packages that are kind of loaded by default into the workspace. I haven't done anything in here yet, and yet there are a few packages that have already been loaded and are available. And the next thing that I will go over is to just load a package. So I like to do my data manipulations using the dplyr library. So if I were to do that, one way that I can make the functions in dplyr available in my workspace is to require dplyr, right? And thing to note here, if we now go back and execute this packages, we can see that dplyr is currently loaded. If another way that we could do this, so there's another method, we could look for a string match. So we could say dplyr percent in percent row names installed packages, and this would check to make sure that dplyr was installed on my version of R, because in order to load it into the workspace, it has to be installed. If I didn't know whether or not I had installed it previously, I could use this string match here to look for it in installed packages. Another way that we could look for packages that are available to bring into a workspace is to use the library method. This is a little bit more cumbersome because it's going to show me every single external package that I have installed in the libraries folder in my R version. So it's going to show me all of the packages that I have access to, and you'll note that there are many, many, many of these. And so I guess a key thing to emphasize is that these packages are available because I've installed them, but I have not yet brought them into this workspace. And so I can't use them here until I bring them into the workspace. I've brought dplyr into the workspace, and just for example, there's just at the top here, there's an applied econometrics package with R, and if I wanted to use any of the functions or methods from that package, I would have to go back here and I would have to add another require statement, and I would have to require AER before I could access any of the functions from that package. Okay, so I just went over how to load a package into the workspace, but the way that we did this a second ago required that we had the package already installed in our library, and sometimes you will want to work with a package that you do not yet have installed, and so I'm going to walk through just how to do that little piece of the puzzle here, installing a package. So the way I'm going to do this is a little bit funky. I don't particularly want to go and try to find a package that's really irrelevant to the things that I do that I don't already have, and I already have a lot of packages. So I'm going to pick one of the packages that I already have, and I'm going to uninstall it from my library. So let's go with data.table for this example, and I'm going to do a remove packages data.table. I'm going to remove that from my library. Then I'm going to look at my library again and see that data.table, datasets, DBI, dplyr. So data.table is no longer in my library, so I need to install that. Okay. And so the way that I'm going to do that is to use a pretty simple method, just install.packages. So there are other ways to install packages in R. Some people keep kind of like a beta version of packages they're developing on GitHub. That is a popular source for packages, but for most of the packages that you will want to install on your version, this install packages method will work just fine. So it's going to install data.table, and now I can check to see if data.table is installed in my library. And just for variety, we'll use the method that we used a second ago, the string matching data.table %% row names installed packages. Installed packages, right? And it is true. So one last thing I will show you on this front here is that there is a CRAN repository for packages in R, and you can often get a lot of useful information about the functions and methods available in a package from the package documentations on this CRAN repository if you search for the package name. So this has a lot of information on the functions and methods available in the data.table package. So this is a useful place for information on packages. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you guys here is just kind of give you a flavor for what it looks like if you forget to load a package and you're trying to access some functions and methods that you normally use from a particular package, but you haven't yet loaded that package into the workspace, which is something that actually happens to me quite a bit. So I've got a fresh workspace. We're going to see that the only packages that are currently available in the workspace are the ones that are kind of brought in by default here. And so the one thing I want you to note is that the dplyr package that I've mentioned a few times is not currently available in this workspace. And dplyr is a data manipulations package that I use a lot. So one thing that I may do from time to time is try to use some functions from dplyr without bringing dplyr into the workspace. And what that would look like is, let's take a quick look at this cars data set. Okay, so cars looks something like this. And if I wanted to do a data manipulation where I filtered the cars data set to retain only the observations where speed is equal to 4, in dplyr I would do something like this. I would use this piping operator, and then I would use the method filter. And if I try to do that right now, it's going to tell me it can't do that. It's not going to recognize this pipe operator, and I'm going to get an error. I get an error because I'm trying to use a dplyr method, and I have not yet loaded the dplyr package into the workspace. So if I add this little line up here, and I bring dplyr in, and I check that dplyr is now loaded into the workspace, and now I try to run this data manipulation line here. It works just fine, and it looks like I have successfully filtered the cars data set to retain those observations where speed is equal to 4.